Hello and welcome to Module 2 in EDU 510, coming to your research problem, literature reviews, and ethics. So a little bit more on this statement of area of research. Here we can see that this research process that you're going to go through in this program is going to kind of funnel down, as you can see in this diagram here. So you'll start with an area of research or a topic that you're interested in, and that's kind of what we're getting to in this first assignment. Then you'll start to think about a research problem, a purpose statement, and research questions. And those all might sound the same, but they're not. The area of research is a more general area or topic. So for example, you might be interested in online learning in general. Your research problem is exactly what it says, the problem that you're trying to either solve or address or look more into. So for example, there might be a lack of students enrolled in online courses in your world. The purpose statement is a little bit more specific yet. And for example, why are students not enrolling in online courses? You want to study that area. That's still not a research question yet. The research question is going to be the most specific, and you'll have to narrow it down by the time you get there. You're not there yet. For example, does lack of internet access deter students from enrolling in an online course at a community college? So you can see how much more detailed that is. It's more specific to the context. It's more specific in that you might be able to actually answer that question to some degree in a very small study like the one you're going to be doing. So many students at this point start to feel like they're looking at a great big wall of some type, or as I often put it, they're looking at this mountain. I remember when I started my PhD studies, I asked a colleague of mine who was graduating the same day that I was starting. I said, oh well, man, this feels just like a mountain in front of me. I don't know if I can do it. And he said, no. Just one foot in front of the other. Just look at where you're going on that week or that month or that course, and you'll get there. And I think that that's what you'll see in this program, that it does shepherd you through the process, and this course is designed to do that. You've already started that in the courses you've done already, including your summer residency, and this is just a continuation and a deepening of that process. So look at it that way. So we're working towards a literature review again in this course. I know you've done one before. This one's a little bit different. You'll do many of the same activities to get there. You'll identify key terms, for example, and I think maybe you've already seen that identifying key terms in the literature is harder than it sounds. So you might want to study online learning, but you might find out that there's a whole bunch of other terms that also refer to online learning. In my case, I was doing teacher professional development. But as you probably know, teacher professional development is called a lot of things. It's called teacher learning, and teacher professional development, and teacher training, and teacher learning and professional development, and all these different jargon terms that can be used to describe this. And so I had to really familiarize myself with the lexicon, with what people talk about in literature when they talk about teachers learning on the job, right? So I had to make sure that I was using the right terms and using them correctly in the search engines. Then locating the literature, and you've been taught how to do that to some extent, of course, using the databases. In this course especially, we want to make sure that the literature comes from databases and not just from the internet in general. You can use Google Scholar to help you scan for literature, but you have to make sure that they're published in legit journals, etc., peer-reviewed material. And so Google Scholar can put all kinds of things in there, and as you'll see from the video, online searches using search engines are often biased, and so we have to be very careful about that, but that doesn't mean you can't use it as an extra tool. So this critically evaluating the literature is something that you're going to do more in this course than you've done in the past. You're going to look at the studies, at things like how rigorous the study is, what the sample size is, maybe some of the flaws in the study, things that the person didn't consider or did consider as they did the study. So we're going to be looking a little bit more critically about how the person comes to the conclusions that they did, because this is a research methods course. You're going to organize that literature in some way that makes sense to you, and here again I will recommend that you use some of the software designed to help you organize literature, or you can use your own kind of I don't know, Google Drive ideas. But it's very important at this point that you start organizing things. Otherwise, things get lost and you remember you read something, but you can't remember where it was. And that's very annoying at best. And it can be really frustrating. So find a way that works for you to organize things, including you might want to subscribe to some of the software that does this for you. I can't recommend any because I actually didn't use any. I used my own Google Drive system. Then you're going to write your literature review, and we'll talk more about that as we get there. Here, I talked a little bit about ethics in the last video, but here in the readings, they talk about big E and little e ethics. And here, eventually, you'll, as a group, and you'll be helped to do this in your courses, you'll be going through an institutional review board. You'll be going through a university ethics process. And if in that case, you'll have to show how you are going to be adhering to codes of conduct, how you're going to inform your participants, how you're going to ensure their anonymity, how you're going to store the data, etc. They'll ask you all of those questions, and you'll have to think through all of those things. It's not difficult, you just have to think through it, and it's actually a very important and really good process. This protects you and the university from liability concerns, of course, but that's not the main reason for doing it. The main reason for doing it is to assure yourself that somebody's looked over your work and has, kind of said that what you're going to do is ethical and justified. There's also school board approval, CAP for the central school boards around this area, the Edmonton area, and other layers of permissions you might also have to go through, and you'll be helped to do that in future courses. So don't worry about that, but understand that these things do take time and you'll have to jump through some hoops at any situation where you're working with a school or a school board. Little e is everything we do as researchers. And so as I said in the last video, it's important to think deeply about how everything you do affects the people that you're working with and yourself. And sometimes that's a reputational risk. Sometimes it's a health risk. Sometimes it's a risk of betraying trust, those kinds of things, but they're very important. And so you have to think about all of those things both before and while you're doing your study. The term respectful, fair, and caring is used by Marshall, and I think if you use that as your guide, you're going to do just fine. So this course talks about both quantitative and qualitative research, but chances are your research is going to be qualitative. And here, ethics is very relational, and it's not easy to just do a checklist for. You have to think about how transparent you're being with yourself, with your participants, and with your readers, potential readers of your work. You have to think about the relationships that you're building, that you're maintaining, and that you're trying very hard to work within to do this research. And so all of that thinking process has to happen maybe outside of written assignments. You have to just go through the process of thinking deeply about what you're doing. And if you do that, we say in the qualitative research world that your research could be deemed to be trustworthy. Decolonizing research is something that, of course, we've come to maybe quite slowly, but it's very important. And I think it's really interesting that although we talk about the Indigenous communities that we work with and how we want to make sure that that is ethical, these guidelines really apply to all research, and they're just great guidelines to use in any research, whether it's with Indigenous people or not. So Brophy and Raptis talk about, and they're non-Indigenous, working with Indigenous people, talking about how to do this. They talk about taking responsibility, about how trust is important on both sides, and being accountable to the community, not just to yourself and your research ethics board, but to the people you're working with. Humility, no rushing to judgment. People who do things may not do things that you agree with for one reason or another, but trying to understand their point of view is really important, and taking more of a broad worldview is sometimes difficult, but will help you be a better researcher and to think more deeply about what's happening in those situations. Does it benefit? And we talked about that a little bit in the last video. Who does it benefit? Does it benefit the people that you're working with? And if not, why are you doing it? And accountability, no harm. As you know, the medical profession says, first do no harm. There should be no harm done to the participants or the community, and you have to make sure that that is very much held up. And a little bit thinking about yourself. Why are you doing this research? If it is just for yourself, then it's probably not enough of a reason to do it. It should be something that helps your community, that helps the participants, that helps others. And in my experience, just about all of these topics that people propose are like that. You're here in this program for a reason, and that's because something called you to it. And it's often that feeling that you want to make a difference in your community. Bull talks about, all these R words, says it very concisely and nicely. Respect, relevance, reciprocity, responsibility, and relationship. What a lovely little way to put all of that together. So, are you going to be doing good research? Well, in many of these textbooks, they talk about how to do methodologically sound research, how to do it, and how to do it so that a qualitative research report actually says something that resembles what's maybe actually happening in the world that you're studying. And of course, there is a difference between methods and methodology. Methodology is a broader term that talks about, in general, how you're doing the work, whereas methods might be things like interviews or focus groups. Will help you to be methodologically sound. But in these chapters, it talks also about the bigger reasons that research is good. And that is, does it serve people's well-being? Does it, as the University of Alberta's slogan says, does it serve the public good? I love this quote. Knowledge shall not be the concern of scholars alone. The uplifting of the whole people shall be its final goal. Very, very lofty, but I think those are very true words. And that's Henry Marshall Torrey, who founded the University of Alberta. So, what does this mean for you? It means that you're going to go through a process where you're going to think hard and deeply about what you're going to study, and you're going to go through on a little path. More on this path will happen in the next video, where I talk about your statement of research assignment and give you some guidelines and things to think about as you do that assignment. That'll be the next video, but I hope this gives you just an overview of the module that'll help you as you launch into the readings. Thanks.